Welcome inside this edition of Big Ten Today. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo, shortly to be joined by Sammy Netling. We look back at Northwestern's wild weekend sweeping Nebraska, now just one win away from an outright Big Ten softball championship. And what does this weekend hold, not just for the Cats, but the entire Big Ten? Plus, Ohio State Director of Tennis Ty Tucker is with us. The Buckeyes doing it once again, the number 3 national seed. We'll look back on their Big Ten tennis tournament title and look ahead to the NCAAs and a very important conversation with Iowa basketball star Patrick McCaffery, who stepped away from competition this past season to deal with anxiety and mental health. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. Patrick sharing some thoughts that everyone needs to hear. But we begin, as we often do, with the big story. Illinois men's golf continues to run roughshod over the rest of this conference. The Illini going wire to wire in a 36-hole event affected by Mother Nature and rain heavily this weekend in Atlantic City, but nothing can slow down the Illini. That is 8 consecutive and 13 of the last 14 Big Ten tournament titles for the Orange and Blue. And we are excited to be joined by the man who has coached each of those Big Ten championships, head coach Mike Small, joining us from Champaign. Hey, Mike, it was an interesting weekend, another title, but a very wet one. Mother Nature obviously was a big factor. Have you dried out yet, and did you use every piece of team-issued rain gear that you own?
Yes and yes. We just dried out yesterday. All of our equipment got soaked all the way through. We packed it wet leaving on Sunday and got back and dried it out when we were in Champaign. But we knew it was going to rain. We saw the forecast 2 weeks out, kept watching. The closer we got, the forecast wouldn't change. We get to New Jersey and the forecast is still the same, and we prepared ourselves for it. But it was a very wet and windy weekend.
Anybody who plays this game often enough knows that you have to deal with the elements. From a coaching perspective, what do you ask of your team when they go out there in a championship scenario and know the conditions are going to be far from ideal?
Embrace it, accept it. It's really a state of mind, and it's something that we talk about, we practice. It's just there's nothing you can do about it, Rick. And if you embrace it and make as much fun out of it as you can, the chances of competing in it better obviously go way up. But nobody likes to play golf in the rain. But when you're competing, and we always talk about it on our team, I mean, our guys believe this, that if we're playing for a championship, we'll play on gravel in a snowstorm if we have to. It's just our mindset. We want to compete. We don't care where we go, what we're playing in, and embrace it. And when it's all done, if you don't do that, when it's all done, you would definitely regret it later. Yeah,
your team has obviously embraced a lot of different conditions during a lot of different championships. I remember watching the greatest final round I've ever seen in college golf a few years back as you guys won a championship from well behind. This one, you lead wire to wire, but Mike, over 36 holes, it's a 17-shot victory. And this is over a field that includes a lot of other nationally ranked teams. Can you help us put into perspective just how impressive a victory of that margin in this short a tournament in these conditions really is?
We've been playing pretty solid all year, Rick, and we have these runs where we'll go a 9 and 10 or 12 hole run where we'll just take it low. We've done that all spring. In our 7 wins this year, we've kind of done that at most of those wins at certain times, and we needed it. We were up by 6 after the first round, which we all know when 6 shots in golf can go either way pretty quickly. So we talked the second round, and we did discuss that the third round may not happen, and you got to go out and play hard today because you don't want that to be taken out of your hands if the third round is not happening. So we went out, and then about 7 or 8 holes in during the second round, we were just kind of still treading water a little bit in that 6 to 8 shot lead range where anything can happen in team golf. And then to spread the word and the vibe, guys, we got to push this thing out. Let's go. Let's see if we can take this back 9 apart. And they actually did. And they went out and just rolled the back 9 and opened up that big lead. And then even on the last day when we were getting out trying to play and trying to get the round in, we were still holding that lead pretty well. So it was pretty much control after that back 9 on the second round.
Mike, I know that every one of your teams, whether they won championships or not, is different in the way that it approaches the game, different in its makeup. What makes this particular group stand out?
Well, this is the oldest team I've ever had on paper. We have 3 seniors, which have never really had before. We've always spaced them out pretty good, but COVID kind of kind of got us backlogged. And when you have Adrian Dumont, Deschamps, and Tommy Cool, who are both top 11 players in the country this year, decide to come back and play a fifth year because they love the school, they want to play with each other, they want to end on a really strong note. That says a lot about the desire and the discipline that these guys have. And last year was the first year, I think, in 13 years we didn't make the national finals. And they didn't want to leave on that. So that's in the back of their mind. And even though we've won all these Big Tens in a row and won a bunch of them the last decade and a half, it's just they wanted to come back and do something and just go back to the national finals and have a chance to win the national championship. And they have that desire and that determination, I think, showed in weekends like this.
Mike, I'd like to talk a little bit more about two of those guys that you just mentioned. Let's start with Tommy Cool, something of a local product from Morton Grove. I remember being at your facility last fall and just in awe of the way he hit the driver. And that was, by the way, with a brand new head after he had broken his previous driver. He drives the ball as well as anybody. But you look at his scoring average over the last 3 years. It's from just above 73 to just better than 72. And now this year, just above 70. Anybody that really knows this game understands to improve by almost 3 shots over a general 2-year span is insane. Why has he gotten better?
Well, it's a number of things. Obviously, he's gotten better technically. He's learning about it himself. He still has a long ways to go, like all golfers do, to figure out what they got to do to keep getting better technically. But he works so hard, and that feeds throughout the entire program. I think he learned it from players ahead of him when he was here younger to see how hard these guys worked and how bad they wanted to be good. And I think he's embraced it. But he's a golf nerd. I got a bunch of golf nerds. They love to play. They love to practice. They love to study the game. And when you get better technically and then you mature. I mean, these kids come into school, 17, 18 years old. And by the time they're 22, 23, they become young men and they grow up and they mature. And when that happens, your golf game generally gets better. If you've laid the good foundation physically and technically, and you have a desire to get better, when you match that maturity and the growth of a young man, then you see results. You see improvement. That's what Tommy's done.
The other guy who's been around for 5 years, you mentioned Adrian Dumont, Deschamps, comes out of the gates. I remember seeing him for the very first time in his freshman spring. His first year, he's the medalist at Philadelphia Cricket Club. And since then, Mike, I mean, the awards are just too many to mention. We'd have to have like a 35-minute interview just to list them all. But in talking with him, he's also one of the nicest, classiest young guys you could ever meet. What's your time with Adrian been like?
He is, and he's just always been very mature, very focused and driven, very, very similar to Tommy. But he's just a classy individual. He doesn't get too far ahead of himself. He has an extra edge, a competitive edge that he's gotten control of, and he can temper the right way. He used to run hot a little bit, but now he's figured that out, and he's staying a little more even-keeled. But when you talk about academics and athletics together, I mean, he's our Big Ten Medal of Honor winner this year for the university, and very well deserving and a great representative. And again, he's been a champion. He's a 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year, his sophomore and junior seasons, and I would anticipate him getting that again this year when that does come out. But he's just consistent. He's static, and as a coach, all coaches that come on the show, I'm sure they tell you the biggest thing they ask for is they just want to know what they're getting every day. They want to know what a person's standard is, and if that person can hit that standard. And coaches don't like surprises. And with Adrian, you don't get surprises. He's such an even keel person. He's accountable. He works hard, and he's a heck of a competitor. And that's all you can ask for.
Mike, regionals are announced on Wednesday. You talked about the disappointment of not making those national finals a year ago. How does the coaching approach work when you get to this spot and the guys, especially those who have been there before, they understand the difference between a bad round in March means you may not win a tournament during the regular season. A bad round in May may mean that your season comes to a close. How does the approach mentally alter a little bit?
Well, the mental approach has been there the same all year. We've put our guys in situations. We've put them in uncomfortable situations and throughout the spring 4 times like this. And maybe last year we didn't do a good enough job. But, when we made all those national finals in a row, I think it was 12 or 13. It was second longest streak in the nation. With that comes pressure. With that comes expectations. And maybe the team wasn't good enough or deep enough to handle those last year. This year we are, and it's a fresh, clean slate. So we've been preparing and putting our guys in positions that, hey, remember how one bad round or one bad day can set us back for a whole season this time of year. We've been talking about that since February and March, like I said. So it's something we're ingraining. But again, if we can hit our standard, I'm a big believer in this. If we can get our standard good enough and get better every day and improve, get our standard good enough to where it's good enough to make it to the national finals and good enough to win a national championship, then all we do have to do is hit our standard. We don't have to peak and time it out at regionals or nationals like a lot of programs, I think, profess to do. If we can just peak come the end of the season, we have a chance to win it. Well, I'm a firm believer. Let's just not peak. Let's just get good enough so our standard can do it. And I think this team has that this year. We've shown that. We've been consistent since day one, but we've gotten better too. So I think it's a mindset, realizing that you have to take care of your business every day. You can't overlook where you're at that day. You can't look ahead, but you got to get your standard good enough.
Mike, folks love to categorize things, and I know I've heard from those who cover college golf, they call what you've done during your time at Illinois building a dynasty. How do you define this run of championships, 8 in a row and 13 of the last 14 in the Big Ten?
I don't know if I define it. It's just what we do. It's just a standard. It's just what we talk about it every year. We have a fall season, which is important. We have a spring season, which is important. And then we have a championship season, which is important. And each one of those serves its own purpose in the growth of a person's individual game, the team, knocking off goals. And then the championship part is where the Big Ten championship and regionals and nationals exist. And for a program in the Midwest and the Big Ten to go to 7 Elite Eights, so you have 7 top 5 national finishes. You have a national runner-up in there. In the last 10 years, 11 years, that's something we're very proud of, and that's a standard that we've set. And so I guess I define it as just what we do. We want to keep doing that. We want guys that come here that want those expectations, that understand that's what we do, and they just pick up where the guys before them left off. And nothing more than that. It's just that's what we do. I mean, kids they come to school to get a great education in Illinois, but we come here to compete, and we come here to do what we do, and that's all we're doing. Yeah,
you pick up where guys left off. You're doing pretty well if you're talking about guys like Nick Hardy, who just a couple of weeks ago won his first PGA Tour event down at the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. Mike, before we finish, I do want to look ahead to the future because it'll be 2 years from now when we see USC and UCLA as part of their first Big Ten golf championship. What has to be figured out when they join? We're talking about a pretty tight championship window already. We're talking about, obviously, travel issues if teams are trying to go from one coast to the other to face each other during the regular season. What has to be addressed to make sure this works from the golf perspective?
Well, the advantage golf has, Rick, is that we don't have a regular season where we play head-to-heads with other schools. We'll see USC and UCLA numerous times throughout the season at different events around the country. We do that right now. But our championship is determined in a 1-week championship every year. This year we're ranked 3rd in the country, but we could have very easily got beat this year and not been the Big Ten champion. We've been the best team throughout the year, but you have to reinforce that at the championship. So the Big Ten championship week is very, very important. With that being said, this week we ran out of time because of the weather. I think with USC and UCLA coming in with the travel they have to do, and then I think every probably 7 years we'll go out there and play, I would think, and the way it works out numbers wise. So when we go out there, it's a long way for the Eastern and Midwestern teams to travel. So I think the window you're talking about in the schedule for the Big Ten championship has to be expanded. Either a day longer or finishing on a Saturday so we can have an extra rain day and give teams a chance to get back on a Sunday before school. But just to get in and get out to play a championship with 16 teams when you may have weather, like we had this year, I think the window has to be expanded.
I'm glad that there's a lot of folks a lot smarter than me. They're going to try to figure out all those logistics and all the stuff that goes into it. What we do know is that for the 8th time in the last 8 years and the 13th time in the last 14 years, Illinois is the Big Ten champion. Mike Small and the Illini getting set for the regional announcements, which come your way on Wednesday. Hey, Mike, it's always great to catch up with you and the guys. The best of luck. The NCAA is all the way through the month of May.
Likewise, Rick. It's great talking to you. Thanks.
Welcome back to Big Ten Today. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the Big Ten reminding everyone to prioritize your mental health and seek professional help when needed. Great advice to everybody, and not just in the month of May, but 12 months a year. It is time for today's big interview. Welcome in Iowa basketball standout Patrick McCaffery joining us from Iowa City. And Patrick, before we get into our mental health discussion, you and I were just chatting about the fact it's kind of the dead week, but next week is exams. This is a stressful time for everybody. How you dealing with all your exams coming up next week?
Yeah, luckily I only have a couple of them, like 2 or 3. I just try to put yourself in a good enough position throughout the whole year to where you're able to, take care of your exams, do all the homework, do all the studying, all that kind of stuff. And, just really try to hone in and lock in on those specific details that help you, thrive in exam week. But it's a lot of time. Not going to be in the gym as much necessarily these next couple of weeks. Trying to finish strong. I'm going to graduate here in 2 weeks. So that's exciting. So I'm just excited to finish strong and keep going.
It is no question a stressful time for all students. That's the course of the year that happens for a lot of folks. And for student athletes, it becomes even heavier because you have this added weight of trying to be a really good competitor both on and off the court. Last year, you stepped away from competition for a little bit of time to kind of deal with some anxiety issues. What was it ultimately that led you to make that decision?
Yeah, I think my appetite wasn't great, and and neither was my sleep schedule. I wasn't eating correctly. I wasn't sleeping correctly. So I think that was just something that I couldn't continue to put myself out there. I worked too hard at this, and so do my teammates, and I didn't want to put them in any sort of disadvantage when I don't want to go out there if I'm not 100%. I had a lot of other stuff going on in my mind, and it's just tricky, that stuff. So I just wanted to get myself in a better space to where I was, had a normal appetite, normal sleep schedule. And it was just something that I just had to do. And, I'm lucky to be a part of such a great program where everybody was super respectful and great about it. And, everybody gave me whatever I needed. And it was awesome. And I was really grateful for it all.
I know you felt like it was something that you had to do, but at the same time had to be remarkably difficult. How hard was it? Who else did you rely on when you decided to make the decision to step away from game competition?
My brother. He was the one that kind of gave me the ultimate, go ahead, like that you could. Well, my older brother Connor, to be more specific, but it was Connor who he was just like, dude, like if you don't feel, because it was after our Penn State game. We had just lost. It was a tough loss. I hadn't played very well for the second or third game in a row. And I was like, dude, like it's just brutal. And he was the one that was able to kind of give me the go ahead. He's like, dude, if you don't feel right, don't play. He's like, if you don't want to be out here, if you need to focus on other things, if you need to figure out other stuff, he's like, that's fine. Like, he's like, we have your back, like I have your back, all that kind of stuff. So, that was really kind of gave me the ultimate confidence to, moving forward to go through with the decision that I felt was probably best for me. And I think ultimately it ended up being what was best for me. I was able to, come back, which I always wanted to do. I didn't want to shut it down for the rest of the year. I wasn't going to do that, but I came back. And the basketball took a hit for a second just because of how I felt physically. And, it's hard when you take 6 games off in the middle of the year. But, that eventually came back. And I was just in such a better place mentally moving forward after that.
You could have made this decision, Patrick, and it could have been framed in a lot of different ways. You weren't feeling well. You had an injury. Instead, you decided to come out publicly and announce why you were walking away for a period of time from the game competition part of being with the Iowa basketball team. Why did you decide to make your decision public?
I think because that's a lot of like guys like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan speaking out were guys that helped me and understand like, oh, that's how you feel. Then maybe you can put a name to like how that specific feeling. So I wanted to be an advocate. I could have just said like, oh, I'm taking time away for personal reasons or whatever the case may be, but I didn't want to do that. I think, after talking to everybody, like our training staff, our medical staff, everybody, they all thought that it would be a good idea if I was comfortable with it, obviously, to, put myself out there and just kind of, be a beacon of light for people who are struggling. And, the support after that was overwhelming. Everybody was super grateful that I had spoken out about it. I think, ending the stigma is really important. And that was something that I really wanted to do or try to take a step in that direction. So I think it was something that I felt I was passionate about. I've been passionate about it for a while, and I wanted to, kind of take that step.
After you did that, and as you were going through this process, was there anyone that reached out to you that kind of stands out, whether it be a big name or someone that just had the right thing to say to you at the right time?
I mean, there was so many people that reached out. There's like everybody has their own suggestions and all that kind of stuff. I really leaned on let Luca and Frank Garza for the meditation piece because they're really big on that, and we did that a lot when Luca was here, and I had kind of gotten away from it since he had been gone. But so then I got back in touch with Frank and Luca, and we were able to kind of go through a lot of that stuff. So I would say they were people that were really important by giving me because there's the physiological benefits to meditation, and it was something that was really great, and I was really appreciative of that, and it really helped me feel better. And I still meditate every day up to this point, and I have them to thank for that. So I would say that one was a really big one for me.
For you, Patrick, what was the hardest part of watching but not playing?
Just knowing that, just that I'm not out there. If they're struggling with something, it's hard to watch your teammates out there, and you know that you can't help them at this current moment, because I love all my teammates and I really care for all of them, and just seeing them out there if they're not playing great. And when I stepped away, we were playing great, but seeing them out there if they're struggling, it's frustrating, and you want to take part in it. But I knew I was doing what was best for me, and then also I'm a competitor. I want to be out there competing. I want to play in those big, loud arenas, in those crazy environments, whether it's at Carver, or whether it's in East Lansing, or wherever we are. I want that's where I want to be. I want to play in those environments, and so me not having the opportunity to do that was something that I had to was upsetting to me, but I knew that I was doing the right thing, and I knew I was going to come back and finish out the season, and I was excited about that part of it. So I was just going to try to get myself ready for that part moving forward.
How did you know, Patrick, that you were ready to come back and play?
To be honest, I don't. It just kind of I just kind of decided that I wanted to play. I had started practicing more. I had started kind of working my way back into the live portion of everything, and I had we were at Michigan State, and I was just like, I want to play. I'm tired of sitting. I don't want to sit anymore, and I just really wanted to come back and play. There wasn't really any specific moment or whatever that hit me and was like, oh, I want to play. It was just just sitting there in those games, and I was just like, I want to play. So that's kind of what it came down to. And then it was, getting myself back ready to play, which took about a week or so longer. And, it was just kind of that whole process of trying to get myself back ready to play. But it was just, sitting there, I was really excited to play, and I felt good about it, and I was ready to move forward.
You mentioned the meditation. What other things do you do? What's your process now, if you can kind of sense those anxiety-inducing moments starting to creep up on you?
Yeah, I'm a big routine guy. I do a lot. I do a lot of the same stuff every single day. That's something that gives me comfort. There's comfort in your routine. Sleep is really important. I sleep a lot. And just being well rested is something that I felt works for me. But with stuff like this, everybody's different. There's no one size fits all for every person. Everybody has their own process. This is some of the stuff that helped me, but it might not help everybody else. There might be other things that other people need. So, and I think that's the tricky part about all of this, is that, there's no perfect fit. There's no cure for everything. It's just kind of something that you have to do to manage it every single day. And that's what I've been trying to do. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Patrick, how much should we be aware of maybe the disconnect between how prevalent anxiety and other mental health concerns could be with student athletes, and how much we actually hear about them?
Yeah, I think there's a big disconnect there. I think, I'm sure there's a lot of, I know a lot of players in the Big Ten reached out to me saying that they were proud of me, and that they were, that they go through a lot of the same stuff, and they were happy for me to step away, because you kind of feel like you can't in certain situations. So, but they were able to, they were happy with me, and they were glad that I was able to do that. A bunch of players reached out and were talking to me about it. So, I think it's very prevalent. I think, especially with social media, I think there's a lot of different stuff that people can get upset about, get sad about, get anxious about, whatever the feelings are. I think there's a lot of different things that, happen. I think our world is different than the world used to be in college basketball, especially now with betting and all of that kind of stuff. So I think, it's just something that is very prevalent. And I think, probably just because they don't talk about it doesn't mean they're not going through it. And I think, everybody should get a little bit more grace in that sense, because we have a lot of stuff going on, and, we're not only basketball players, we got a lot of other stuff going on. So I think from the fans and everything, just more grace is important.
Lastly, Patrick, you share with us some great stuff. I love the no one-size-fits-all thought, and that everybody has to deal with this in their own special way. But if there was a message that you were trying to send to anyone who may be watching, whether they be a student athlete, whether they just be a young adult, someone similar to you in age that is dealing with whether it be anxiety or other mental health concerns, what would that message to them be from you?
take care of yourself. It doesn't really matter what you have going on. Just take care of yourself. Nobody's too busy to do all that. If you need to take a step away, you should be able to take a step away and figure out what you need to do for yourself if you feel a certain type of way. I think the most important thing is just, taking care of yourself and putting yourself above all the other things that go on in your life. And I think, it's like, I'm all for being selfless and I'm on a team and I want to be there for my teammates, but I had to take a step away for myself because in order for me to be my best version of myself with my team and my teammates, I had to handle some things. So if you're not at peace with what you have going on, you need to take care of yourself and you need to figure out what works for you. Like I said, there's no one size fits all, but you need to step away, talk to somebody and try to get to the bottom of why you feel the way you feel. I think that's really important. Just take care of yourself and put yourself above everybody else, because at the end of the day, that's what's most important.
Exceptionally well said by Patrick McCaffery in an interview so much more important than wins, losses, points, rebounds. Great stuff, Patrick. We really appreciate the time. Thanks for everything that you've done, not just today, but in bringing more and more awareness to mental health concerns and the importance of mental health during Mental Health Awareness Month. Thanks, Patrick.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
Time for today's big stat. Ohio State coming off the 2023 Big Ten Men's Tennis Tournament Championship, where the Buckeyes reigned supreme for the 15th time in program history. Head coach and director of tennis at Ohio State, Ty Tucker, joining us. Here's an interesting note. Ty has been a part of all 15 of those, 14 as a head coach, but one as a player back in 1991. Ty, I'm guessing that 91 feels like yesterday when you think back on it?
I thought we were going to have a good chat, but you started with the 91, so I'm not sure I'll be able to finish it.
Oh, I love that. That is absolutely the way to start. Listen, it is always good to chat after a championship. Every tournament title is special, but for different reasons, because of the makeup of the guys, because of the way, Ty, that you got there. What made this particular tournament championship special?
I mean, obviously, when you beat Michigan in anything, it's going to be special. So I would say you start with Michigan, and then the fact that we hadn't, we've won 17 straight regular season titles, but we hadn't won a Big Ten tournament title since 2019. It seems like a long time ago, but we lost a year, obviously, with COVID. But we lost last year to Michigan in the finals, and 21 we lost to Illinois 4-3, being up 3-0 in that match. So, we've been talking about winning this Big Ten tournament title for most of the season. Obviously, it was one of the goals, obviously, to win our 17th straight regular season title was one of the goals as well. But we really wanted that tournament title.
What makes that so difficult, Ty, to win both, to back up a regular season title with a tournament championship?
Well, we've played Illinois 4 times this year, and we played Michigan 3 times this year. So every match is on tape, and everybody watches videos, and you can see, just breaking down the match that we just played. I could tell that Michigan had done their homework by guys positioning themselves on deuce points where they were taking things. So, they picked up a lot through playing us, 2 times prior to Sunday. So to be able to keep winning when you're playing, great coaches, great student athletes at Illinois and Michigan, to be able to win with that much video being out there was a little sweet too.
And there was some sweet video from that particular final. I'll start with that unbelievable doubles match. Goes to a tiebreaker. Andrew Luschownik, James Trotter have to fight off 2 match points. They're down 4-6 in the breaker before eventually coming back to win it 9-7. I have to know, what was it like to watch that, and what were the emotions like for a head coach understanding what that point could be worth?
I'm not sure I was watching. I could have been hiding in the corner if you had good footage. But it's difficult because in that match we were up 3-1, 40-15, a break, a serve, and that's what you're looking for in doubles. One set of doubles, you get a break, you hold out, you win. And somehow Michigan down 40-15 in that game was able to break back, and then it went back and forth, and they grabbed a 6-4 lead in the tiebreaker. And James Trotter, Andrew Luschownik's a great guy, but James Trotter came up huge. I mean, was probably down 6-4, hit 3 winners, outright winners. It's tough to hit a winner in doubles with 2 guys on the court, and he hit 3 outright winners to to get us the victory at 9-7. So down 6-4, we won 5 points. 3 were off James Trotter, outright winners. Andrew's done a great job for us. They're a great team. They've been as high as 6-7 in the nation this year. I think they're currently 12 in the nation in doubles, and have a legitimate shot to go far in the NCAA tournament at the end of the month in the doubles portion.
You mentioned James Trotter. He was named the Big Ten tournament's MVP. I can't count quite this high, but I believe his win in singles was his 25th straight. What's allowed him to play at the level he's playing at right now?
First, there you go again. You talk about 91, and now you're messing with a man's hot streak at 25, bringing that up. So
I'm not messing with anything. He's playing so well. I don't think anybody can mess with him.
On the third one, I'm taking the earpiece out and going out of here.
Why is he playing so well?
He's doing well. You know, he's got a big serve. I think he's got the best serve in the country. So when you have a serve like that, you know, it's tough to break. And the guy is 6'3", 6'4", and 130-mile-an-hour serve and hits his spots well. And he's our only our COVID guy. He's in his 5th year, so he's been here for all this time. Obviously, chose to play his COVID year this season, and he's been absolutely tremendous. And to see him be the MVP, and you know, he deserved it. I mean, an unsung hero, never complains about what spot he plays in the lineup. You get a lot of guys that want to be up there playing number 1 or number 2, have a better chance to be All-American in those positions. And James Trotter just takes the 3 tennis balls and constantly goes. Doesn't matter if we're in Evanston, doesn't matter if you know, we're in East Lansing, he goes and holds serve. And when a guy's putting that much pressure on you, sooner or later, he's going to get a break on you. And, you know, he'll beat you 6-4, 6-4. It's kind of a routine. It sounds like a close match, but, you know, he routines a lot of people 6-4, 6-4 by just holding serve.
I got to be careful with this next one because I do not want that earpiece coming out. We're not done quite yet. The clinching point comes from Justin Boulay with a win over Andrew Fenty of Michigan. Now, it's interesting because you mentioned all the film that you have on each other, and Fenty had beaten Boulay in their last 2 meetings. So what adjustments were made there that allowed Justin to get that win and clinch the tournament title?
You know, we needed Justin to hit out on that forehand more. I mean, Andrew Fenty's a quality player, one of the best players in America, and he was, you know, he had Justin's number, but they were close matches. I think they were both 3-set matches, and that he had lost, and we had an opportunity for Justin to make a couple of changes and serve to a couple different locations. But, you know, the game plan always stays the same on Fenty. Most of the country knows what you need to do to be successful against Andrew, or try to do. But guy's got a great serve, great athlete, great competitor, and you know, it's a long season, but, you know, for 6 weeks of this 4-month season, Fenty might have had claim to be the best player in the country. And, you know, it was nice for Justin to finally get that victory, and it ended up being the clinching match. So it was real nice for him.
Ty, a little bit off the beaten path here, but I want to talk about a little bit of the switch that we've seen in pro tennis. I mean, for years, everybody in the U.S. that wanted to play pro, they played juniors. Most didn't worry about playing college. And then you start to look about some of the tournaments that we've seen lately, and I want to bring up an Ohio State alum and J.J. Wolf, who makes the 3rd round of 2 of the last 3 U.S. Opens, the 4th round at the Australian Open earlier this year. Are we seeing more of that, and are we going to continue to see more of the top American players being willing and happy to play college tennis on their way to playing pros?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's so tough to be a 17-year-old, 18-year-old boy and play professional tennis. I mean, you've got to commit to 210 days a year on the road. You're not going to have a chance to build up your body like you can with the great strength coaches at all of these institutions around the country. I mean, it's fantastic what you have. It's truly a minor league, major college sports. And I think, you know, as a tennis player, it's just so difficult. 210 days a year in a hotel room by yourself, trying at a time where you need to pack on pounds and pack on strength and learn to eat. And, you know, you have access here in every university in the Big Ten to nutritionists. I mean, people that will come to your apartment and teach you how to cook. I mean, what foods to have. I mean, it's just, it's amazing what the Big Ten does for their student athletes. And, you know, I think around the country, the same thing. But, you know, it's such, I mean, if you're going to pass up a nice scholarship to play college tennis at a Power 5 school, you've got to have 5 years. You've got to commit to playing 5 years of pro tennis from 18 to 23 years old, and that'll cost you $400,000. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough to get out there and be one of the best junior players in the world and then play 30 tournaments and lose 60 times when you're used to losing 5 or 6 times a year. So you lose your confidence, and you see so many kids turn pro at 18 years old, and they've quit by 21. And it's a tough sport. If you look at it, maybe 7 to 10 players in every birth year in the world make it in tennis. So, 7 guys born in 1980, 7 guys born in 1981 in the world. So, there's time, and the average age of the top 100 is probably 28 years old. So, there's time to go to college. But, I think you've seen some good success from, guys coming from college onto the pro tour.
All right, we kept him in the chair for the entire interview, and now he's a busy man because he has to host regionals, host the first round of the NCAA tournament, I should say, this weekend. He is Ohio State's Ty Tucker, Director of Tennis, Buckeyes men's head coach, and Coach of the Year for the 16th time. Ty, we appreciate your time this week. Best of luck this weekend as you open up against East Tennessee and, of course, throughout the rest of the NCAA tournament.
I appreciate your time.
With a crazy weather-delayed comeback win over Nebraska and a weekend sweep, Northwestern softball officially back-to-back Big Ten champs. The Wildcats have clinched at least a share of the Big Ten regular season title. One win this coming weekend or a loss by Indiana, and Northwestern is outright champions. Welcome in Sammy Netling for more on Northwestern and Big Ten softball as a whole. That game on Sunday against Nebraska, I know you're on the call, was absolutely insane. You have a 2-hour weather delay. Northwestern scoring 6 runs to come back and win this game, scoring all 6 with 2 outs in the inning in which they did it in the bottom of the 5th. How did they do it?
To me, the difference for this Northwestern team in that game was their base running. The 2 plays really stuck out to me. The bases clearing double by Kendall Peterson, an errant throw by a Husker, hits off of Nader's leg heading into third base. She does not hesitate to take the extra 60 feet and score. And then on what ends up being our game-winning run, the wild pitch, Kansas Robinson on third, again, does not hesitate. I think that area in particular has been so improved for this offense 1 through 9, the speed that they add with those 2 first years, and they're just so smart and efficient to not let an opportunity to take an extra 60 feet go to waste.
Were you surprised that Danielle Williams went back out there to pitch? It ended up being her 98th win. That's an all-time program record at a place that has had some unbelievable pitchers inside the circle. I was scratching my head a little bit that she went back out there to close it.
Yeah, and I think she struggled a little bit when she came in before the weather delay, but how good was she after that? She was so efficient. You just felt like, okay, the Huskers have had this 2-hour delay. Are they going to come back and find some new momentum? And Danielle Williams proved why she has been the ace for this team her whole career, but all season long. I think she was so tough in that moment and ultimately secured their repeat.
And not just Williams, but this entire staff has gotten so much help from a lineup that is perhaps better than expected. Now, we knew what the returning stars were going to do. There was no question about what Jordan Rudd can do and others that are around her in the middle of the lineup. But I've been struck. You mentioned some of the first years. They are so good 1 through 9. There's really nowhere to give an opposing pitching staff a breather.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this Northwestern team is even better than last year's team because of what you said, their balance. In the box, 1 through 9, off the bench, both of their bases clearing doubles this weekend were off of pinch hit opportunities. In the circle, their bullpen, and like you said, they are just so efficient. They are so relentless. They have something that no one else in this conference has, which is experience. You can't teach it. You can't buy it. This team has been through so much to have their returners that they have, to lean on that experience in high-stake, big-game opportunities. They are so tough to outlast, especially when the game gets tight.
Yeah, and Jordan Rudd was great when we talked to her a couple of weeks ago. I asked her about those first years, and she said, when I came in as a first year, I was terrified. They came in, and they are 100% ready to go, and we rely on them as much as we rely on me or any of the other veterans on this team. It's Northwestern and Rutgers this coming weekend, and if the Wildcats, again, get one win over the Scarlet Knights, they are your Big Ten regular season outright champs. We already told you about Northwestern's fate. Here is proof via the graphic. 3-game lead over Indiana, so the magic number just 1 to become outright champions. Minnesota, Nebraska, the only other teams in conference play, hard to believe at this point, that are above 500. You see that logjam with 5 teams either at 10-10 or 9-10. And so what is at stake this weekend? Well, Northwestern goes to Rutgers needing just 1 win. Really important series toward the bottom for Michigan State at Indiana, Ohio State at Nebraska, and Michigan at Minnesota. We're back with Sammy Netling for more on those series specifically, and we start with Michigan and Minnesota, 2 teams after last weekend seemingly heading in very different directions.
Minnesota right now is the hottest team in the Big Ten because they have the best pitcher right now in the Big Ten in Autumn Pease. And like you said, she in my opinion, is what gives them the confidence that we've seen on the offensive side of the ball. They are so tough right now in the middle of that lineup. And now you have a Michigan team coming off a sweep against a Hoosier team. I think they are potentially getting into trouble territory for NCAAs. Jane Sage is a hard place to play at Minnesota this weekend. This is a must-win weekend. I think you have to take at least a win if you're a Wolverines team.
Yeah, if you get swept at home, as Michigan did last week by Indiana, you cannot afford to get swept again and expect to have any chance to get into the NCAAs, save the auto bid, were you to go on and win the Big Ten softball tournament coming up next week. As for Ohio State, Nebraska, we're starting to get into the situation where for some teams, you mentioned Michigan is close to this. I think other teams have already arrived at this, where it is put up or shut up weekend inside the Big Ten softball schedule.
The Buckeyes are that exactly. They are sitting at 45 right now in the RPI, and the difference for me between this Buckeyes team and the Nebraska team that they're going to face, both of them coming off sweeps, but this Buckeyes team got shut out basically every single game against, again, a tough Gopher pitching staff, but the Husker bats were hot this weekend. It's what kept them in the game, specifically in Game 2 and Game 3 against Northwestern. I think the question mark for me is in the circle for Nebraska. How does Wallace in particular bounce back after what was a tough weekend for her? And so again, I agree with you. I think it is a must-win specifically for the Buckeyes. I think Nebraska has done enough to still be in the conversation, to still have a solid shot at an at-large bid, but you do not want to go into the Big Ten tournament having lost your last 2 series of the year. So this is a big weekend for these 2 high-powered offenses.
I'm fascinated to see how Nebraska bounces back mentally because there were opportunities against Northwestern. You had a 5-run lead late in the game on Sunday, lost in extra innings on Saturday, could have just as easily taken 2 of 3. Instead, you get swept. Need to bounce back this week at home against Ohio State. And lastly, Michigan State, Indiana. Indiana's been one of the best stories in college softball this year. If you haven't watched Taryn Kern play, you are missing one of the best freshmen we have seen in a very long time. But this weekend isn't just about the Hoosiers. It's about Michigan State and the Spartans' immediate future as well.
It is, and you talk about the Hoosiers coming off of a very exciting weekend. It was a huge sweep in Ann Arbor against the Wolverines. In my opinion, has solidified their spot in the NCAAs, but you're going back at home against a Spartan team that can be a little tough to play with. They're gonna take a win every now and then, and if you're a Hoosier team, you're going up against a Spartan team that is 142 in the RPI. You cannot afford a loss against this team. Even playing the Spartans can potentially hurt their RPI. And so how do the Hoosiers manage the expectations coming off of the high that was last weekend? Can you take care of business on the defensive side of the ball, in the circle, trust your offense, and go into the tournament on a high note?
RPI is so fickle. Go back to last weekend in Big Ten baseball. Michigan State having a great year. They sweep Northwestern. They started the week at 60 because Northwestern is so low in the RPI. Michigan State actually dropped to 66, and that could happen to Indiana this weekend with or without a sweep. For Sammy Netling, I'm Rick Pizzo, and of course, thanks to all of our guests on this edition of Big Ten Today. We appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you again on Wednesday.